Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about President Biden and his interview, how he did. An interview that was billed as national interest, prime time, was said to be pivotal to his campaign. We will provide a brief synopsis of the interview. We will talk about reactions to it. And then we'll talk about, I don't know, $11 million in change or so. I'll go ahead and tell you now, my take is probably going to be very different than most political commentators, but that's because I did something I don't think many of them did. I watched the interview with normies, with people who vote, but who aren't steeped in politics all the time. And while they watched, I said nothing. When they had their conversation afterwards, I said nothing except for one little part at the very end, and I'll tell you about it. Okay, so let's do the synopsis first. Pretty much the entirety of the interview was Stephanopoulos actually being adversarial. I know I said that earlier, but I was kind of joking. I didn't really expect him to be. But he did push on a number of questions. It was Stephanopoulos being like, hey, President Biden, are you fit? And Biden being like, yeah, I'm fine. And then he'd talk about his accomplishments. And then Stephanopoulos would be like, okay, fine, you did these things, but at what cost to you? And he's like, nah, I'm fine. And then he'd talk about his accomplishments. That's the format of pretty much the entirety of the interview. When it was over, the normies had two real questions. Now, they had concerns prior to this, and they had two questions when it was over. The first, one of them was like, hey, you know what? Biden really should, take a neurological test and release it, because that was something Stephanopoulos said. The other people were like, no, you don't release medical records. That's invasive. You don't do that. And by the time that conversation was over, the kind of consensus was that it was rude to ask. The other question dealt with Stephanopoulos continually asking about different people. Well, if Pelosi told you to throw in the towel, would you? Well, what if it was Schumer and Jeffries? And Biden was kind of like, look, unless it's the Lord Almighty, I'm not dropping out. I'm paraphrasing here. And they had questions about that. At that point, I interjected in the conversation. It's good politics. It's good internal politics within the Democratic Party to say that. Why? Because politics is like the mob, and right now he's Tony Soprano. If they smell weakness, Paulie is going to be whispering in Chris's ear to try to get him to step down so he or one of his friends can advance. So it is smart politics to say that there is no combination of people that could get him to step aside. He said that. I don't believe that to be true. But those were the questions. Their concerns are not gone, but they were alleviated. They were concerned, and they are nowhere near as concerned now. I myself, I think he did well. He is old, so obviously there are still concerns from where I'm sitting, but they're lessened. They are lessened, not because of what he said, but because of his facial expressions when he was getting pushed about questions. He is still as politically savvy as he has always been. At least during that interview he was. Now, one thing I do want to say before we get into some other commentary is watch it yourself. It's less than half an hour. Don't take the word of any political commentator, myself included. Watch it yourself. I know that a lot of commentators are already saying that he was underwhelming, that it didn't really address the people's concerns. Those takes were out within minutes of that interview being concluded. I don't know how they could know that. I get it, though. This is an easy story for the media. You have somebody who everybody has known for half a century is a walking gaffe machine, and he stutters. So to keep this story alive, all you have to do is wait for the next gaffe and be like, does this mean he's unfit? And you'll get good ratings. I understand that. I get it. The media has done a very good job of saying that he's just not all there. And again, I have concerns, but no more than I do about Trump at this point, as far as acuity. They've done a lot to paint him as not that sharp. I have a question, though. Prime time, national interest, built up in a way to specifically attract the people that he needs to reach, those people who doubt him. 28 minutes or so, and the overwhelming majority of it was him listing his accomplishments. What's a 30-second ad spot cost primetime? About 200 grand. With that demographic information, it being specifically tailored to the people he needed to reach, yeah, it's right around $11 million. Just wondering if the Biden campaign paid for this or not. If not, I'm going to suggest that maybe he's a little bit sharper than some people are giving him credit for. You might want to put him in a category with McConnell. Don't underestimate that old man. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.